Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to Ring to Me is Bondage by Meena Asadi. This is for the second semester additional English uh, students for GSC. First, let us look at the speaker of the poem or the person who writes this poem. She is Meena Asadi, an Iranian poet, songwriter, author, and activist who has actively represented the rights of women and children. She has got various awards, and the most important being from the Human Rights Watch from USA. She has written about 14 books, out of which Who Throws Rocks is very popular. So let's straight away go to the poem. A Ring to Me is a Bondage by Meena Asadi. What does she say in the first 4 lines? I do not think of prayer mats, but I do think of 100 roads which pass through 100 gardens full of silk tassel trees. So she very clearly gives you a statement of what she does think of and what she does not think of. It's very clear. I do not think of prayer mats. Instead, I think of 100 roads with silk tassel trees. So she is actually making her priorities very clear here. She is introducing herself as a woman, as a human being. And in the first person, very assertively, she says what she does think of and what she does not think of. Then, let's see what she says in lines 5 to 9. I know the Qibla. It has its place where happiness is, full of silk tassel trees. I'm sorry. I know the Qibla. It has its place where happiness is, and I say daily prayers on the silk roads with the music of the sparrows. Now, this is important. The music of the sparrows. She says she means no disrespect to the Qibla, which is the direction of the Kaaba in Mecca, and all devout religious people who believe in the Prophet look at the direction of the Kaaba, towards the direction of the Kaaba, and pray. So she says, look, I know that there is happiness there. People get their, you can't question faith. People get their happiness out of looking in that direction and praying. I'm not against it. But what I am for is, I say daily prayers on the silk roads with the music of the sparrows. To me, the azan is the music of the sparrows. You know that, when prayers go on in the mosque, they have loud reciting of the prayers. Now, to her, it's the silk roads which look more like prayer mats, and the music of the sparrows are more like prayers for her. So, even here, she is very, very clear that her preference, though she knows this can be happiness in praying towards the Qibla, she feels that her preference is to walk the silk roads and listen to the music of the sparrows. So she is a devout Muslim. She does pray, but her prayers are slightly different from the mainstream prayers. This is what she says in lines 5 to 9. Let's see what she says in the next lines 10 to 15. Remember, she thinks of movement and progress. When you're going on silk roads, you're moving. So there is a kind of preference for movement and progress rather than sitting in one place and stagnating. Okay? So let's go on to lines 10 to 15. I do not know what affection means or what can be the difference between one land and the other. I repeat, I do not know what affection means or what can be the difference between one land and the other. Aloneness is what I call happiness, and desert is what I call home. And whatever makes me sad, I call love. So you see, she is actually again reiterating her preferences. Whatever makes her happy, they are very simple things. Uh, Her affection or her patriotism is not again mainstream. She doesn't share that feeling. Everybody has a passion for the country, for the love of the land, for what, the land you're born in, comfort in sharing affection, um, that comfort in family, in social togetherness. She finds that, she's different. She says, much to your surprise, what makes me happy is aloneness, solitude. So, the normal experiences that other people revel in doesn't excite her. So that's why she says, what I can understand and what I am familiar with, like the desert, that's what makes me call it home. Rather than, ideas and ideologies which tell you to believe in your nation, have faith in your nation, love and be passionate towards your nation. Those are mere words to me. What really excites me is my what I experience. I experience the desert. I'm happy about it. I experience aloneness. Remember, it's not loneliness but aloneness. There's a slight difference. When you enjoy your own company, that is solitude, the bliss of solitude. It takes a lot for people to enjoy their own company, be in their own company and enjoy it. For that, you have to have immense self confidence in yourself. If you don't enjoy the company of yourself and you're constantly hankering for other people around you, then you are lonely. So please note the difference between loneliness and solitude. So, this is what she's trying to tell you, that what stimulates others as passion and happiness, it really is not her cup of tea. So, she is again declaring the same idea that she made in the first stanza. And whatever makes her sad, she calls love. So, something that moves her, stirs her into an inexpressible sorrow, that she feels is love. That means she's attached to it. That's what she's trying to explain. That attachment makes you feel sad. Now, the next lines. To me, a £5 note means wealth. I describe anyone who picks a flower as blind. And in my eyes, a net that separates the fish from water is a murderer. See how clear she is, and look at the images that she gives you in line 16 to 21. £5 note gives her happiness. That's enough, it'll do. Because it means wealth to her. That means she can be happy in the smallest of things. She can be happy with just a £5 note. In the smallest of things, she can find happiness. Material wealth, the quantity of it, doesn't make her really very happy. And to me, enjoying nature as it is without disturbing it. I think all of us right now are really very aware of how there is a backlash if we demand too much of nature and exploit nature too much. Let her be. So there is a kind of a motto of live and let live. Don't separate the fish from the water. If you do that, to me, you're a murderer. You have no respect for life. Don't pluck a flower which is growing on the plants and the trees. Don't exploit it. Let it be. Live and let live. Such people have no idea of the value that is ascribed to nature and natural things when you let them be. So the beauty is in enjoying it and leaving it, not in usurping it and owning it and possessing it. So, what she's again trying to tell you is that my joys, my experience, my aspirations are very, very simple in life. I don't demand too much. Even a 5 pound note can make me happy. Looking at a flower instead of plucking it can make me happy. Enjoying the fish, seeing it in water can make me happy. What makes me unhappy is people who, when I see people plucking the flowers, then they are blind to this concept of live and let live and beauty being sustained and prolonged. And those who pick up the fish from the water, they again, to me, look like murderers. Let's see what the next few lines have to say. I look at the sea with envy. And say to myself, how small you are. Perhaps the sea also feels the same when it joins the ocean. See how now she's talking about this whole concept of relativity. There are many poets who are fascinated by the sea and who have written so much about the sea. She is also, as she's uh, fond of nature and admires nature, obviously she also respects and pays a tribute to the sea. So, what she says is, I look at the sea with envy, with jealousy, and say to myself, how small you are. Referring to herself, not the sea. I look at it with envy because I'm not even a drop when I compare myself to the ocean. So the vastness of the sea makes me realize how small I am. But then I'm very quick to realize that maybe the sea will also feel the same when it meets the ocean. So I'm quick to realize that there is a kind of relativity in things. What seems very big on one scale, in one dimension, can become very small in another dimension. So one has to recognize this relative dimensions of nature, and this is what actually cultivates a certain humility and respect for nature. She's aware of that and she talks about that. So she says the vastness of the cosmos and her deep understanding of the relativity of existence is so clearly expressed here. She says that if she's envying the sea may be envying the ocean. So two things are brought out here: her deep bonding with nature by understanding nature in all its dimensions, and also the fragile but very not fragile, the invisible but very deep bond that exists between human beings and nature. Let's see what she says in the next few lines. I do not know what is night, but day is what I understand well. To me, a flower bush is a village, and a short walk in the garden of memories, freedom. And any meaningless smile, joy, to me, anybody who has a cage in his possession is a jailer. So, full of images here, images of freedom, joy versus imprisonment and confinement. How do these things come about here? Let us look at the first two lines of this stanza. I do not know what is night, but I understand well what the day is. So I'm comfortable with what I understand. You all know that darkness is always equated with ignorance and knowledge or enlightenment. The day. Night is ignorance, day is knowledge. So, what I understand well, I'm comfortable with. The night I don't understand, so I'm not very comfortable with it. And I can express uh, the beauty of the brightness of the day because I know it. And in my experience, let me tell you, she says, a flower bush is a village, and a walk in the garden of memory is freedom. I don't require much. I'm a very simple person with simple joys. If I see a flower bush, to me it is equated to seeing an entire village of people. So I'm very happy with the smallest things in life. A flower bush can make me as happy as being in a village. In the same way, she also says, walking through the garden of memories. What is it that ultimately excites a person traveling down a memory lane? She That is the image of a woman walking through a garden. But this garden is special because it is a garden of memories. So again, do you see that movement is freedom and joy? And what is the image of imprisonment and confinement? She says, anybody who has a cage in his possession is a jailer. The cage can be of many types. It can be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional. So, what are the things that give me happiness? A meaningless smile, a small bush of flowers, a walk in the garden of memories, daylight. These are things which give me joy. What are the images of imprisonment and confinement? When I walk into a place which I'm not familiar with, like night, I'm not happy and comfortable, so I feel imprisonment, I feel confined. If I see a person who has a cage, it may be, as I said, ideological, mental, physical, emotional. Now, this cage is a representation of imprisonment. So, anybody who tries to oppress, suppress the voices of others is a jailer. So, uh, this desire and aspiration for a sense of joy and freedom versus that imprisonment and confinement is a very common theme among women and women writers because it's institutions and systems and rituals and customs which inhibit the voice of women. So many a time you find that women try to communicate their desire for freedom in various ways. This is one such. Okay, so now let's go on to the next lines, which is the crux of the poem. And I see any thought that may remain useless in my hand as a wall. I see any thought that may remain useless in my hand as a wall. A wall. To me, a ring is bondage. I do not think of prayer mats, but I do think of 100 roads which pass through 100 gardens full of silk tasseled trees. To me, Any thought that seems useless is a wall, and a ring to me is bondage. It's very clear. Thoughts that have frozen because they are not applied become walls, become barriers. If we are stuck in a mindset, in a certain ideology, in a certain fixation that all women are very homebound and they should not go beyond. Now that's a mindset. If I get fixed into it, to me it becomes a wall. I can't cross that barrier. I can't progress. I can't move. So, such thoughts to me they seem walls. Similarly, a ring to me is bondage. You have two images here, a wall and a ring. An institution is a bondage to me, slavery to me. If I marry because I have to marry, and not because I feel the need to live with someone throughout my life, then that is bondage. That is slavery. And then again she reiterates saying that to me, walking down silk roads with tassel trees is much more delightful and enjoyable than a prayer mat. So, what gives her joy and what does she prioritize? 100 roads, gardens, silk tassel trees, the music of sparrows, those who do not pluck flowers and enjoy flowers as they are on the trees, those who do not separate the fish from the water, standing by the ocean or the sea and thinking of how vast the cosmos is and how small they are really in the scheme of things, in the design of the universe, and a flower bush is happiness to her. Deserts, a meaningless smile. Mm, those who do not jail other people, those who give importance to free thoughts, and those who do not insist on binding relationships through a ring. All these are representations of freedom, and the opposite of that is imprisonment. Somebody who separates the fish, somebody who plucks the flower, somebody who travels at night, somebody who owns a cage, somebody who does not understand the value of the sea and the ocean, somebody who does not admire a bush, somebody who insists that you wear a ring or you have a prayer mat or you listen only to certain established prayers in order to show your devotion to God. Those are symbols of confinement and sorrow and imprisonment. So you have a very clear division here of what she prefers and what she does not, what she likes and what she does not like. I've just made a small list of the images of freedom and the images of bondage so that you can, understand this through the images. You see, every poem has it's like a collage sometimes. Each image represents or communicates something. And if you bind all the images together, you get one side of the story. You bind all the opposite images together, you get the other side of the story. So I think I have given you time to look at the images. So the images of freedom and the images of bondage. Okay? So in conclusion, what can we say? She seems to have her own personal understanding of freedom and happiness. Those who live quiet lives without disturbing other forms of life or destroying them, enjoying it as it is, as they are, as they exist. It takes a lot of courage to lead a life like that, being a woman, because a woman naturally is fit into a framework, and that framework can be very difficult to break out of. So to her, she is dissociating herself from institutions like marriage, the kind of established religion, wealth, socially compelling relationships. Uh, Her preferences for nature, natural life, simple joys, um, not very inhibiting relationships or constricting wealth. So she is a different kind of person who has her own idea of happiness and very convincing. She's very convinced about what she believes in. So, freedom is in having thoughts which move on their own steam, and people who live and let live and are on the move are free. So, her idea of happiness is to be unbound, live on her own terms, and be on the move. So, obviously, it's a woman with a mind and voice of her own. She is not going to be bound and restricted by societal diktats. Let's just look at the questions, which are very simple. I'm sure you can answer them on your own. So, the idea of freedom, take all the images of freedom and try and link them. You will get what the poet means by freedom. All the images of letting go, living and letting live, mm, not being bound by a ring, not being bound by a wall. So, you can analyze this. So, the difference between the way others um, look at the world and the way Asadi looks at the world. As I've told you, there is already a mainstream. People who prefer a prayer mat, people who prefer a ring, people who prefer walls, people who prefer cages, people who prefer nets. They are the people who look at they are the people who are the mainstream, who look at the world as everybody else does, but not so Azadi. So, how does the contrast between freedom and bondage emerge in the poem? I've already told you, you can answer it through the images used. The significance of the title, a ring to me is bondage, is slavery. It is pretty obvious and self explanatory. You just elaborate on that. Why do you think that Azadi as a woman is speaking of the different roads to freedom from bondage? I want you to dwell on that. Every image that she talks of is a road, a journey. Sitting on the prayer mat for some is a journey. Getting out of the prayer mat and walking 100 roads through 100 gardens with silk tassel trees is a journey. Why is this preference and prioritization there in Asadi? Remember, as a woman, these are her priorities. And constantly women are told to do this and not this and not this. So it is obvious that a woman would like to break free from those reins and those constraints and look at alternative roads to freedom, because all that, the do's and don'ts of society, which is pressing hard on them, becomes bondage, and they obviously want to escape from those reins of bondage. So this is the end of the lesson. I hope you've understood it. You can get back to me if you have any questions. Thank you.